This is Daily Pressure Report USA at Pressure Report USA.
Welcome back. Today we are looking at a story that is really changing the economic map of the country, and I don't say that lightly. Before we jump in, you know what helps us keep the lights on and the data flowing? Hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop a comment. It really helps get this information out there.
And honestly, today is one of those days where the data is painting a picture that feels, well, it feels historic. We aren't just looking at, a quarterly shift. This can be the end of one era and the messy start of another.
That's exactly it. We're looking at a shift in the landscape that is staggering when you really dig into the numbers. Let's just start with the headline figure for the financial services industry. For decades, if you worked in finance, you were in New York, maybe Chicago.
The power centers.
But now we're tracking this massive migration. We've seen a 2% shift in total financial services jobs moving from those places to Texas and Florida.
And I want to pause on that 2% because it sounds so small, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds like a rounding error. But when you apply that to the American workforce in that sector, you're talking about nearly 2 million jobs.
2 million.
That isn't a few satellite offices opening in Miami. I mean, that's the population of a major city just picking up and moving south.
Exactly. It's a huge transfer of wealth, of intellectual capital, and of course, tax revenue. And the timing here is not a coincidence. This is all speeding up right as the financial capital of the world. New York City has just entered a totally new political reality.
You mean with the inauguration of a mayor who explicitly promised to, quote, govern as a socialist?
And that's the tension point, right? You have this massive economic engine that runs on capital, on investment, and frankly, on profit.
And now the person holding the keys has pledged to govern on principles that basically see that engine as the enemy.
It's a high-stakes game of economic chicken between a hard-left administration and, well, billion-dollar corporations.
So the big question we have to get into today is, in this standoff, who blinks first? And more importantly, when the dust settles, who actually pays the price? Is it the hedge fund manager who can just hop on a jet? Or is it the person serving them coffee who gets left behind?
Right. So stay with us because we're going to break down if this is just political theater or if we're really on the edge of an economic earthquake.
Okay, so to really understand the pressure here, we have to look at what happened on January 1st, 2026. This was not your standard inauguration.
No, it wasn't. Zoran Mamdani was sworn in as New York City's 112th mayor. And usually, when a politician wins, especially one with a more radical background, they use the inauguration to pivot.
To the center, yeah. They talk about unity and being a mayor for everyone. They try to calm the markets.
Mamdani did the exact opposite of that.
He doubled down.
He stood right there on the steps of City Hall and declared, I was elected as a democratic socialist and I will govern as a democratic socialist.
And he added, I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed a radical.
I mean, that's a rare level of transparency. He's telling the business community flat out, I am not bluffing.
And you have to look at who was standing there with him.
Right.
Bernie Sanders swore him in. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gave a speech.
This wasn't just a local thing. This was a national signal.
The signal was that the far-left progressive agenda is now in the driver's seat of the world's most important financial city.
And the reaction from the business community was immediate. The sources we've looked at describe the mood as just terrified.
Which is interesting because usually they wait for policy, right? They want to see the actual tax rates.
Exactly. They want to see the regulations. But here, they're not waiting. They are looking at the rhetoric and they are heading for the exit before a single law is even signed.
Well, markets hate uncertainty, but you know what they hate even more?
What's that?
Hostility. And that's what this signaled to them. It's one thing to have a mayor who wants to raise taxes to fix the subway. It's another thing entirely to have a mayor who seems to view your entire industry as the problem. That creates a level of unpredictability that capital just will not tolerate.
Which brings us to the hard data. We've pulled 5 key statistics that really show the scale of this exodus. And the first one is 200.
200? What is that?
That's the number of major companies that have moved their headquarters to Texas just since 2020.
That is a staggering velocity. And what we're talking about when we say major companies, these aren't just, a couple of guys in a garage.
No, these are established firms with HR departments, huge payrolls.
So when 200 of them decide to pack up and move to one specific state, that creates its own kind of gravitational pull.
It builds momentum.
Right. Other businesses feel like they have to follow just to stay in the game.
And that connects directly to our second number, which is 18%.
Okay.
That is the percentage of the entire country's financial services employment that is now housed in Texas and Florida.
And where was that before?
Pre-pandemic, it was sitting at around 16.2%.
So there's that 2% shift we talked about, but what does that number really mean on the ground?
Well, when financial services move, it's not just the bankers.
Hmm.
It's the law firms that service them. It's the accounting firms, the high-end IT support.
You're basically lifting an entire layer of the upper middle class economy and just dropping it into the Sun Belt. And the contrast in where things are going is so sharp, which leads to stat number 3, 51%. 51%.
That is New York's net loss percentage for corporate headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So for every 2 companies that moved in, 3 moved out. It's a bleeding wound.
And you compare that to a place like Florida.
Florida saw an 86% net gain. It's almost a direct transfer of economic power. New York loses, Florida gains. It's a zero-sum game.
And this is where people usually talk about business climate, but there's a huge political consequence to this that gets overlooked.
Right, which brings us to the number 1. Just 1.
Okay.
That's the number of congressional seats lost by New York, California, Illinois, and Michigan after the 2020 census.
While Florida gained a seat and Texas gained 2.
Yeah.
See, that's the long-term impact that I think people miss. This isn't just about tax revenue for the city budget. It's about influence in Washington, D.C.
It's about power.
Yeah.
As people and companies leave the Northeast, the whole political center of gravity shifts south.
New York is literally losing its voice at the federal table because its population is stagnating while the South is just exploding.
It's a spiral. You lose money, you lose people, then you lose political power.
Which makes it harder to get the federal help you need to fix the problems that made people leave in the first place. It's a brutal feedback loop. And to cap off the numbers, look at Texas again. A 71% net gain in corporate headquarters. So while New York is losing half, Texas is gaining almost 3/4 more than it loses.
It just shows this isn't a rough patch for New York. It's a historic realignment.
So we've got the numbers. The migration is undeniable. But let's talk about the why. Because you always hear people say, oh, it's just taxes.
Right.
But New York has always had high taxes. California has always had high taxes. Companies stayed for decades. Why is the dam breaking now?
It's a combination of things that have created, really, a perfect storm. The first driver is clearly that policy clash. Mayor Mamdani hasn't just promised, socialism as a vibe.
He's promised actual programs.
Expensive, concrete programs, universal childcare, a free bus system, rent freezes.
And look, however you feel about those programs, and a lot of people support them, the math is the math. They cost billions.
Billions that the city does not currently have. And Mamdani's been very clear. His funding mechanism is to raise taxes on millionaires and corporations.
But that leads to the second driver, right? The state versus the city. This is where it gets really messy.
It gets incredibly messy.
Yeah.
Because in New York, the mayor is powerful, but he's not a king. He can't just raise the income tax by himself, can he?
No, he needs Albany. He needs the state government to sign off.
And Governor Kathy Hochul has basically said, not so fast. She's against raising personal income taxes because she's looking at the same charts we are.
She knows the wealthy can just leave.
But reports suggest she is considering raising corporate taxes as a kind of compromise.
Which just sounds like a disaster waiting to happen for businesses.
How so?
You've got a mayor who wants to spend like crazy, and a governor who's trying to hold the line on one tax but might crack on another. It's just chaotic messaging. And you compare that chaos to the third driver, the welcome mat, somewhere else.
Texas and Florida aren't just sitting back. They are actively recruiting these companies. Low taxes, light regulation, and a culture that says, we want you here.
Okay, but what's the root cause? Is it just the tax differential? Or is it something deeper?
I think it is deeper. It's the ideology. It's that class warfare rhetoric from the inauguration.
When he quoted Bernie Sanders saying, the system is rigged, the rich are greedy.
Yeah, if you're a business leader, you hear that and you think, okay, this administration views me as the enemy.
Then you look at Florida, where the government is saying you are the job creators. Even if the taxes were the same, that hostility makes it very easy to justify leaving.
That's the pressure point. The hostility creates the uncertainty. Businesses aren't waiting for the tax bill to pass. They are moving based on the threat of it.
So let's talk about who actually gets hit by this, because the headlines are always billionaires fleeing, and I think for a lot of people, the reaction is good riddance.
It's an understandable reaction.
Yeah.
If they don't want to pay their fair share, let them go. But we have to trace the ripple effects.
So who are the big names threatening to leave?
Well, Barry Sternlicht, CEO of Starwood Property Trust, told CNBC his firm is considering it. John Katsimatidis of the Red Apple Group, a huge grocery store owner, told Forbes he might move his HQ to Florida.
Okay, so if Barry Sternlicht leaves, he takes a private jet, he buys a mansion in Miami, his life probably gets better.
He's insulated.
Completely. But who gets hurt?
It's the regular person. Think about the subway worker or the sanitation employee.
Mm.
If the tax base leaves, if those high earners who pay half the city's income tax just vanish, the city's budget shrinks.
And when the budget shrinks, services get cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't run a free bus system if there's no tax money to pay for the gas and the drivers. The irony is, the working-class New Yorkers who voted for Mamdani to improve their services
Are the very ones who will suffer most if his presence drives away the funding for those services?
It reminds me of that Detroit spiral. Capital fled, the tax base eroded, and the people left were the ones who couldn't afford to move. They got left with crumbling infrastructure and no jobs.
And if a company like Red Apple Group moves its HQ, that's not just a CEO leaving. That's administrative assistants, IT staff, the janitorial contracts for their building. All those jobs just evaporate.
There's also this personal irony in the reporting that I think really symbolizes the whole thing.
What's that?
Mayor Mamdani built his brand as a champion of the tenant, living in a rent-stabilized one-bedroom in Astoria. But as soon as he took office, he moved into Gracie Mansion.
The official residence, Upper East Side, gated, overlooking the river.
Right. So he's now personally insulated from the housing pressures and the crime rates that the people he left behind in Astoria are still dealing with.
So we've got the inauguration, the threats, the migration. The big question is, what comes next? This is a live experiment. How does it play out?
We're looking at three potential scenarios. The first is what we'll call the window dressing. This is the best case for the city's stability.
Okay.
In this version, the mayor sticks to small, popular moves. He's already cracking down on junk fees, subscription traps, small business fines.
Things that basically everyone hates.
Exactly. If he sticks to that, governs more moderately than he speaks, the panic might subside. He keeps the socialist label for his base, but governs like a pragmatist.
That feels optimistic. I mean, given the Bernie Sanders intro and his whole pledge not to abandon his principles, I agree. Which brings us to scenario 2, the squeeze. This is our base case. The mayor pushes ahead with the core agenda tax hikes, strict rent controls. Governor Hochul tries to act as a firewall. Maybe she blocks the income tax but allows other levies.
So the result is a slow, grinding decline, a slow bleed. The tax base continues to leak out, not in a flood, but a steady stream. Services slowly degrade, but the city doesn't collapse overnight.
It just becomes a harder place to live over time. And then there's scenario 3, the implosion. This is the worst case. The mayor refuses to compromise. He fights the governor. Maybe they have a budget gridlock that paralyzes the city, or the governor caves and allows the tax hikes.
Right. And in that scenario, the corporate migration turns into a flood, a panic. The city loses critical funding, crime rises, and we see a fiscal crisis that makes the 1970s look manageable.
So what should people watch first? If I'm listening to this, what's the first signal to tell me which track we're on?
Watch the governor's office. The whole thing hinges on her. Can Kathy Hochul hold the line against the tax hikes? That's the first thing.
Where else?
Watch the incoming deputy mayor, Dean Flehan. He's been downplaying the risk of rich people leaving, basically saying, let them go. If that attitude shows up in policy, we're heading for scenario 3.
And we have to watch the actual legislation, not just the talk.
Absolutely. Executive orders on junk fees are fluff. Watch for the first actual tax legislation. When the rubber meets the road on the budget, does Mamdani really go for a massive hike? That's the test.
And does Governor Hochul blink? That's the key. So to recap where we stand, we have a socialist mayor in the financial capital of the world. We have a historic migration of businesses to red states like Texas and Florida that's already reshaping the U.S. economy.
There's a standoff over taxes between the city and the state.
Caught right in the middle is the working class waiting to see if their city is about to go broke.
It really is a pivotal moment. The decisions made in the next 6 months in New York will ripple out to Austin, Miami, Nashville, everywhere that money is flowing.
No doubt.
And now we want to hear from you because this is happening in your backyards.
Where are you watching from and what are you seeing locally? If you're in Texas or Florida, do you feel that crowding? Are housing prices spiking?
And if you're in the Northeast or the Midwest, are you seeing the vacancies? Are businesses leaving? And question 2, do you think this gets better or worse in the next 6 to 12 months? Does New York stabilize, or are we watching the beginning of a collapse? Let us know in the comments. We read them, and we really want to know what the view is from the ground.
And finally, if you want to stay ahead of this economic curve, make sure you are subscribed to Daily Pressure Report USA. Share this deep dive with a friend who needs to understand where the economy is heading. We'll keep watching the numbers so you don't have to. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.